The story of Margaret of Valois is a heartbreaking tale of a woman marked by the shadows of tragedy in matters of love and romance. The weight of the sorrowful destinies that befell her countless suitors and lovers paints a poignant picture of a woman caught in the midst of a relentless and unforgiving curse. In a sorrowful twist of fate, Margaret of Valois, known as Margot, was brought into the world as the third daughter of Catherine de' Medici, the Serpent Queen who ruled all of her children as ruthlessly as she ruled a nation in strife. Princess Margot's beauty was legendary and her spirit indomitable. Yet, for all her charm and allure, her romantic life was marked by a series of heartbreaks, scandals, and untimely deaths that would have shaken even the most resilient of souls. From her earliest infatuations to her mature liaisons, Margot's path in love was strewn with danger and despair. Her admirers, ranging from dashing dukes to charming courtiers, often met ends so gruesome they seemed plucked from the pages of a Gothic novel. Beheadings, assassinations, and executions. These were the grim finales that awaited many who dared to love the beautiful and passionate Margot. But was Margot truly cursed, or was she simply a woman caught in the deadly web of Renaissance politics and religious strife? As we delve into the passionate and perilous world of Margaret of Valois, we'll uncover the truth behind the myth of the kiss of death and explore how love, in an era of ruthless power plays, could be the most dangerous game of all. Let's begin. From her earliest years, Margot's beauty was renowned throughout Europe. With her fair complexion, blue eyes, and abundant black tresses, she was described as looking more like a goddess of heaven than a princess of earth. Don Juan of Austria, upon meeting her, was struck speechless by her radiance. Her charms, it was said, were better suited to ruin men than to save them. But Margot was more than just a pretty face. She possessed a keen intellect, a strong will, and a passionate nature that would both serve and betray her throughout her tumultuous life. Margot's first significant romantic interest was Henri de Lorraine Guise. Their attraction began in 1568 when Margot was 15 and Guise was 18. The young duke embodied everything Margot desired in a man. Tall, blonde, athletic, charming, and valiant on the battlefield. Their mutual attraction was palpable, and they seemed a perfect match both personally and politically, as Guise's family had already married into the royal family with her sister Elizabeth. Plus, they held advisory positions to Margot's brother, King Charles IX. However, her affair with Guise, while passionate, was ultimately doomed on several counts. When news of her liaison reached her family, their response was both brutal and reflective of the times. Margot's brothers, including King Henry III, along with her mother, Catherine de' Medici, were enraged not just by the affair itself, but by the potential damage to the family's reputation and political standing. Their fury manifested in a shocking act of physical violence against Margot. Mother and son dragged Margot from bed and gave her a full-on beating that went beyond a mere familial dispute. It was a demonstration of the absolute control that male relatives and mothers wielded over royal women's lives and bodies. Such vicious discipline was seen as a way to enforce moral standards and maintain family honor. Regardless of the beating, Margot, who had a rebellious nature, continued their budding romance, but it was to remain short-lived. Soon after, the Guise family became embroiled in a conspiracy to kidnap King Charles, destroying any chance of a union between Margot and Henry. This early disappointment set the stage for the tragic pattern that would follow Margot throughout her life. Love thwarted by political machinations. Added to that, in a cruel twist of fate orchestrated by Margot's manipulative brother, Henry, Duke of Anjou, Guise was forced to marry someone else. This event marked Margot's first experience with the harsh realities of court politics and the way they could brutally interfere with matters of the heart. In 1572, at the age of 19, it was decided that it was time for Margot to fulfill her royal duty to get married. Catherine de' Medici, having alienated many influential families, found herself with limited options for Margot's marriage. Despite her reservations, she settled on Henry of Navarre, a Protestant, hoping this union would help ease religious tensions in France. The marriage was controversial, as it was unthinkable for a Catholic and Protestant to wed, and Margot was none too happy as well. As you might imagine, on the wedding day, Margot had to be physically forced to the altar, and even then, she never uttered the words, "I do." It was only when one of her brothers pushed her head forward in a nod that the priest took it as an affirmation of her vows. As a devout Catholic, Margot saw this marriage as a potential path to damnation, emphasizing that her resistance on her wedding day was primarily due to religious concerns rather than Henry's appearance or personality. The wedding preparations were further marred by tragedy and intrigue. Henry's mother, Jeanne d'Albret, died suddenly while shopping for gloves, leading to rumors of Catherine's involvement. It was said that she had poisoned the gloves in an effort to thwart any attempt by Albret to interfere with the marriage. The wedding ceremony was followed by the customary 4 days of celebration. But what came next was far from traditional. In a shocking turn of events, Catherine arranged for the assassination of many visiting Protestants at the end of the festivities. This led to the St. Bartholomew's Day massacre, a widespread killing of Protestants across France. The massacre was triggered by an assassination attempt on a leading Protestant general, which Catherine had orchestrated but blamed on a faction of Protestants called Huguenots. This event marked a brutal escalation of religious violence in France, with Catholics targeting Protestants throughout the country. During the St. Bartholomew's Day massacre, Margot's true character emerged in a defining moment. Awakened by a wounded Huguenot seeking refuge in her chambers, she instinctively protected him from pursuing guards, saving his life. This act of compassion extended to other Huguenots, including her new husband, Henry of Navarre. Despite being forced to convert to Catholicism, Navarre's life remained in danger as Catherine de' Medici sought to annul the marriage and potentially have him killed. Margot, feeling guilty about her unwitting role in the massacre, made a noble decision to refuse the annulment. This choice effectively placed Navarre under her protection, preventing her family from harming him. As an aside, Navarre never learned of Margot's selfless act, mistakenly believing she had been complicit in her family's treachery. The truth of her motivations only came to light after both had passed away when it was revealed in Margot's posthumously published memoirs. It was in the aftermath of St. Bartholomew's Day massacre that Margot's reputation as a woman cursed in love began to take shape. It started when her husband Henry, now considered a tentative ally of Margot's family, was invited to join Anjou and others in suppressing a countryside uprising up north. In his absence, the now married 19-year-old Margot found that her status as a married woman paradoxically afforded her more liberty than she had experienced as an unwed princess. Seizing this opportunity, Margot immersed herself in the vibrant social scene of the French court, joining an elite circle of noble women renowned for their beauty, wit, and patronage of the arts. This group, which came to be known as the Muses of Paris, frequented salons and soirees where they mingled with the era's most brilliant artists, writers, and intellectuals. It was in this stimulating milieu that Margot's world expanded, exposing her to not only new ideas and influential people but to a dashing figure, 20 years her senior, known as the best dancer at court and an incorrigible ladies' man. His name was Joseph de Boniface, who went by the nickname La Mole. And this was yet another passionate affair for Margot that was doomed to be short-lived. The punishment for de Boniface was brutal and exemplified the dangers of loving Margot. He was imprisoned in the conciergerie in Paris, where he endured horrific torture. A device that crushed every bone in the foot was used on him before he was finally beheaded and quartered. Legend has it that his last words were a plea for someone to tell Margot that his final thoughts were of her. In a gesture that would become characteristic of her devotion to her fallen lovers, Margot publicly wore mourning for de Boniface and was said to have retrieved his skull to give it a proper burial. This grim episode marked the beginning of a pattern that would haunt Margot for the rest of her life. While still in her loveless marriage to Henry of Navarre, Margot fell in love again. This time with a man named Louis de Clermont. Their affair quickly became a source of scandal at the French court. Clermont, known for his bravery and poetic talents, wrote many stanzas of poetry for Margot expressing his love for her. Margot, in turn, spoke lovingly of Clermont in her memoirs, indicating the depth of her feelings for him. Their relationship aggravated both her brother Anjou and her husband, Henry of Navarre. Anjou, who was by now King Henry III, was so displeased with Clermont's association with his sister that he arranged an assassination attempt against him. However, Clermont managed to evade the attack and survive and left the court post-haste. Time and again, Margot would find love only to have it brutally snatched away. Her next significant affair was with Jacques du Harlay, a young noble whose relationship with Margot became the subject of vicious court gossip. Rumors even circulated that she had been found in a compromising position with him, and if that wasn't enough, whispers of an affair with her youngest brother Francis added fuel to the fire of scandal surrounding her. As a side note, I'll just add that rumors of physical encounters with her brothers were exaggerated in a salacious novel written 300 years later by Alexandre Dumas, entitled La Reine Margot, published in 1845. While Dumas was known for his meticulous research and incorporation of historical facts, he also had a penchant for dramatic embellishment, making this fictional depiction sensational and engaging for readers, but without any basis in historical fact. Margot's brother, the now King Henry III, took it upon himself to discipline his wayward sister. In a cruel public humiliation, he invited Margot to be his hostess at a ball in the Louvre, only to use the occasion to accuse her of having a child by du Harlay. The king went on to list all her supposed liaisons in intimate detail before ordering her to leave the court. This public shaming led du Harlay to desert Margot, realizing that a relationship with her was too dangerous to maintain. Disgraced and furious, Margot fled Paris into exile, settling in a fortress in the Auvergne region. But even here, far from the intrigues of the court, tragedy continued to dog her romantic pursuits. During a serious illness, Margot was nursed back to health by the son of a local apothecary, who fell deeply in love with her. However, this tender romance met a violent end when one of Margot's bodyguards, also in love with her, burst into her bedroom in a jealous rage and stabbed his rival to death. Undaunted by this string of tragedies, Margot soon found solace in the arms of an army captain. She described him romantically as a figure who, in an earlier century, would have inspired the songs of troubadours. But their love was not to last. Betrayed by her brother King Henry's spies, the couple was apprehended. In a desperate attempt to save her lover, Margot hid him in a chimney, but he was discovered. The king, determined to teach his sister a lesson, ordered the captain's execution to be carried out in front of Margot. The manner of this execution was particularly gruesome, even by the standards of the time. The unfortunate suitor was strung upside down until his head filled with blood. Then, while still breathing, he was dropped headfirst into an open grave and buried alive. His last act was to kiss a fragment of one of Margot's blue velvet gowns, a poignant symbol of the deadly price of loving the queen. These tragic events might have broken a lesser woman, but Margot's spirit remained indomitable. Finally, Margot was rid of her brother in 1589 when he was murdered by a fanatic. And good riddance to him. 10 years later, Margot's husband became Henry IV of France and decided to divorce her so that he could find a younger wife to provide him with a legal heir. In 1599, Margot agreed to a royal divorce in exchange for keeping the title of queen and a large sum of money, thereby becoming one of the richest women in France. Once divorced, did Margot continue to seek love and passion, as Dumas and other historians of malicious intent have suggested, most notably an anonymous pamphlet entitled The Satiric Divorce of 1607, which painted her as a nymphomaniac from an early age? Let it be said that the pamphlet is not considered even remotely a reliable historical source, but rather an example of the kind of political propaganda and character assassination common in that era. Something that still happens today when it comes to women in power, especially in the realm of politics. But I digress. What we do know is that, after she was freed from the chains of marriage, Margaret of Valois dedicated herself to a life of reflection, learning, and patronage. In her later years, she cultivated an image of dignity and grace, far removed from the scandalous accusations that plagued her early life. Living independently in Paris, she transformed her residence into a vibrant intellectual and artistic salon, where writers, philosophers, and poets gathered under her patronage. Her appreciation for the arts was not limited to mere patronage, as she also contributed to the literary world herself. Her memoirs are among the earliest examples of a woman writing in that genre, offering a candid and personal reflection on the tumultuous events of her life and the court she lived in. Today we can look back on Margot's life with a more nuanced understanding. She was neither saint nor sinner, but a complex woman navigating an extraordinarily difficult time. Her curse in love was less a supernatural affliction and more a reflection of the deadly serious nature of politics and power in her era. To love Margot was to place oneself at the center of a whirlwind of competing factions, religious conflicts, and family feuds. In her later years, Margo of Valois sought peace and stability. Her remarkable beauty, often praised in her youth, matured into an aura of regal composure, and her once flamboyant lifestyle gave way to one of measured elegance. She spent her final decades as a respected and influential figure in Parisian society, known for her wit, intelligence, and enduring charm up to her death in March 1615 from a prolonged illness. Thank you for watching.